All right, y'all. Welcome to Reading, Writing, and Rain. This is a podcast about books, writing, and my writer's journey. I am your host, Rhayne, and you can follow me on X, Twitter, not sure what it's called, but Coleman Rain is the handle there. Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok is Reading, Writing, Rain. And when you're listening to or watching this podcast, please feel free to use that hashtag RWRPod to share your thoughts, opinions, and the like when answering any questions that might be brought up during the show. Any questions you might have for me about anything writer related, maybe personal, I don't know, we'll see. So you can also reach me at readingwritingrain@gmail.com. And thank you all for joining me back again to talk some shop. So this episode of the podcast is actually going to be first in a series that I will be using to discuss my characters. So the work in progress that I'm working on now, Project Yi, Project Y, I've been working on for quite some time, and there are a few episodes of vlogs, and there may be one or two episodes of the podcast that discusses the the project. So I am very close to finishing at the time of this recording, and so I figured I'd celebrate by kind of exploring some of the arcs that will be involved in this book. Now, in this book, we have three siblings who return home for the holidays. They are forced to deal with the relationship sins of the past in order to move forward with the relationships in their present. So I'm still working on the pitch, the synopsis, the blurb, the summary, but that's the gist of it. Three siblings back home for holiday break, dealing with some emotional relationship, love adjacent stuff that either was unresolved or they did not even know was there or realize was there. And in the midst of doing so, they learn a lot about themselves and about how to navigate with relationships going forward. This has been a project I've been excited about for a very long time. I'll have to figure out, I believe it was in podcast form where I discussed this actually started off with a cast of eight and a whole totally different. It was still a holiday novel, but I believe it was going to be something closer to like a murder mystery, something like that. But twists and turns and developments along the way, I've settled on this here, and I like it. I like it. I've spent a lot of time in this world, and I am happy with what I have, and I'm excited to continue building on what's there. So, for this first episode, we're going to dive into the eldest sibling, Sterling, and her major story arc is enemies to lovers. So, so enemies to lovers is a pretty, it looks like popular trope, and I want to be clear because I am the way in which I'm going about publishing is relatively new to me. The way in which I consume books and have in the past is a little different than what I see other folks. Of course, times have changed, books have changed, scheduling and things have changed since I started being knees deep into reading way back in the day. And so what I normally do is just come up with the story. I will write the story. I'll outline, I'll do all the necessary work, but that's my focus. I never enter a story with a particular trope in mind. To be quite honest, the trope portion, like naming it, has been a struggle for me because writing contemporary fiction that leans heavy into the romance and relationship side, because I don't, it is, I want to say it's difficult, but it is interesting trying to figure out the landscape. And so with these characters and these stories, these are just stories that were interesting to me. I was pulling from lived in experience, from experience that I've seen other people in my life go through, stuff that I may have seen in TV, picked up in books and movies along the way, along my years of life. And to have to kind of fit some of these storylines into tropes was a little frustrating, but I was, done my due diligence. I've been doing the research and trying to get familiar, because the last thing I want is to present something, and I would much rather undersell and over deliver than vice versa. Like I don't want to be like, this is a royal dark academia billionaire romance with found family, but then it's just like the one person going on a quest with a dragon. Like that's not so my biggest kind of fear and concern is like I want to make sure I'm getting these conventions and these labels either correct or close enough to what I have, that it isn't jarring when you read through it and you're like, I thought there was going to be some studying and some obsessing over Latin, but all we had was a dragon with a broken wing, so stuff like that. So with this trope, this enemies to lovers, it none of this was written with that in mind. Everything was written and developed with the idea that I just like this story. I like this take on this relationship. I like seeing where this goes. And so having to then do the work to work backwards to kind of fill in where this trope falls or what trope this even was really interesting. And the major trope, because there's some sub tropes, I guess, bubbling underneath. But the main one is enemies to lovers. And with that, they say enemies to lovers trope is when two characters start off as enemies and over the course of the book or series end up in a romantic relationship. These enemies have to overcome their differences or misconceptions about each other, and in the process, they fall in love. And so, yeah, that's very close. I'm not gonna say it's 100%, but it's very close to what's happening here. And with Sterling and her love interest, there is a lot of growing pains, a lot of bumping heads. And so I found a few other tropes that fit, or labels that fit with this story arc. I have work adversaries, we have forced proximity, opposites attract, we have the grumpy sunshine, emotional scars, and redemption. Now with redemption, I'm kind of playing loose with that one because my interpretation, without spoiling too much, is that there is some redemption that is had. Like I feel like, but if that's a very specific trope where it's like, no, redemption is just when there's a physical fight and someone goes to jail or whatever, then that's not this. But there is a arc of redemption. So I'm really excited to finish out this story and to get it out in the world, because I would love to hear what you all think about Sterling and her mess that she's dealing with being back home for the holidays. So, getting into the actual book and the development of Sterling in this storyline, it was really important to me to try to be as objective as possible. Or not biased as possible, but like you could say there's some favoritism there because these folks have come out of my head, but at the same time, I am actively working on making sure that everyone has their flaws and their points of what I feel like could make them redeemable. And the beauty, I think, about writing this is, one, it seems like a lot of people love this trope, but two, no matter what you do as an author, as a writer, as someone who creates content, once it's out in the world, it's no longer yours. You created it and you are the god of that content and whatever. But once it's out in the world and folks are consuming it, it's theirs, to an extent. And I can have every single intention on Sterling being this wonderful woman who everyone loves, or the love interest being this phenomenal person who just is great. But based on the reader's own lived in experience, there may be things that both of them do, say, or whatever, that is triggering or that pulls up something that you had buried within. And so you just don't like this person. And I know there is a huge, like, which I'm still learning and figuring out myself, but this huge like issue with some authors not appreciating the reviews and like the star ratings and whatnot. And I don't want to go too deep into that, but I bring it up to say, when it comes to a character I don't particularly have a problem with people hating a character, and I think that's so funny. And I guess that's kind of separate from reviews because you could review a book, hate a character, and give it a great review and rating, but you can also love a character and think that a book is terrible and give it a bad rating. So I guess scratching out the review part of it. Um, I am looking forward to. I mean, everybody wants praise, of course, but if there is a character that is absolutely hated for whatever reason, like that is a conversation that I'm kind of interested in seeing, not necessarily joining because, author spaces and reader reviewer spaces are, separate. But if someone hates, one of these folks for something, like I would really like to know, like, okay, why do you hate Sterling? Why do you hate so and so? Is it something that they did? Is it something that's tying to something you've seen before? Or and that's a very interesting thing to me. But with this enemies to lovers, I crafted this story with the intention on, again, making sure everyone was flawed and everyone had a little bit of redeemable redemption qualities in them. Because truly, this story is just, I don't want to say slice of life. It's just a contemporary story. It's just three kids back home from holiday break, experiencing new emotions, settling into this adulthood, having to make decisions and face consequences that just a couple months or a year ago were left up to your parents. Now, how do you navigate that? And it's very different from being a teenager living in your parents' home, thinking and acting like you've grown, like, oh, I got the nice shoes, I got the car, my family can take care of whatever else, to having to take care of stuff on your own. Not saying you're devoid of family and family doesn't support you, but like you're now on your own. And it I really I had to look, well, I didn't have to look too hard, but into some past experiences that I've had, even going off to college on my own, 1,200 miles away from home, nobody but myself, my car, filled to the brim with clothes and shoes and appliances and everything else, and just figuring it out. And so it's not as drastic in that sense, but um, that is something that is present. And Sterling dealing with things from the past affecting her present day, things that she doesn't even realize or know about. Um, and that has been fun. That has been a fun ride to be on because I do truly love that character. I think she's like badass, and I would love to see this in live action somewhere and watch her, cast her and everything. But I think she's going to, by the time I'm done, because I'm like right at the very end where there's some major things going on that I haven't put pen to paper yet as far as the actual fleshing out the story, but the outline, everything is already set up. And another thing I'm excited for is going back and going through another draft and going through the editing process and fine-tuning a lot of the things that I'm discovering about this character over the course of writing. Like I'm not gonna say I hate enemies to lovers. I'll say I don't even really think about it, because I was going to say like, oh, I don't hate it, but I'm learning to love it more. But I can't say that I've ever had a preference where it's like, oh, I don't want to see a movie if it has enemies to lovers, or on the flip side, oh, I absolutely have to see this if it's enemies to lovers. It never really paid me no never mind. And writing in this contemporary romance adjacent space and getting inundated and hit over the head with those tropes and those ideas and a lot of those buzzwords over and over is so interesting to me. But it's forcing me to be more aware of those things and how they're being perceived. Because what I feel like is, regardless to how you feel about different tropes, or maybe book talk in general, or publishing schedule, or the big five, or whatever, there is your feelings about it, and then there's the reality of it. So I can hate it, but that doesn't change what it is. And so, though it's a little challenging, or it really was in the beginning, it's not so much now. I'm still learning what goes where, who does what, and how the pieces fit together. And so what I'm finding is that even with the enemies to lovers, let's say I did hate that trope, even with that, when you speak on it or you address it or you make it a thing, like so people know this arc is the enemies to lovers arc, that comes with baggage. It's not necessarily good or bad, but it comes with an idea, a preconceived idea of what that is. Walk with me because I think I might be taking a long ride. But if you look at like spoilers for Scream 6, the latest one, the killer in that movie, though I consume a lot of true crime mystery media and I could figure it out, the casting of that killer based off of everything else they'd been in before was so ideal, because even though those previous roles technically have nothing to do with the movie, those previous roles do inform the audience perception of that person going into the film. Yes, they're going to give a performance that they need to in this one, but you can't deny that if I'm a fan of this person or if I hate them, if I am familiar with their filmography, some of that is being brought to this new project. And so I say all that to say, if I don't know, Cicely Tyson was cast in a movie, you would think in this day and age, rest her soul, that she would be like a grandmother, a wise elder. Now, taking that idea of her from her previous work, flipping on his head, and then now you make it so that she's the killer. And it's like, oh shit, I didn't see that coming. So I say all that to say, when it comes to these tropes, whether you hate them or love them, they're an invaluable tool to kind of use to your advantage, even if your advantage is simply knowing that people love this, they eat it up, and this is going to be a good easy sale. Or if it's that idea of you can't break rules without knowing the rules first. So what are the rules of enemies to lovers? Well, simply put, two characters, two or more, I guess if you're poly, they go from enemies to lovers. They go from hating each other to learning about each other to being able to tolerate each other to fancying each other to maybe spending more time dating and then fall in love. So there's an arc there. And with me writing out a story and outline and being like, this is what I want, and then having to later go back and go through tropes and figure out, well, how does this fit? It's been really exciting. It's almost like a brain teaser because there are some other things that go on, and even with the tropes that I have established or that I've discovered most closely fit with my characters, even those, there is some nuance to it. The next episode I'll be discussing bully romance, and even in that there is nuance in it, because when I review the bully romance idea against my story, it fits, but then it doesn't fit, but then it fits, So I know it sounds so doggone vague and whatnot, but this is something that I'm really coming to enjoy about my writing, because I've been writing forever. I've been consuming stories forever and a day. A lot of my media growing up was drama. I posted the video about my childhood goals and my adult goals as it pertains to writing, and what does that look like, how do they compare, how are they different, and then moving into other things that were adapted into live action that were books before, what does that look like, and then related to the SAG-AFTRA strike and whatnot. But I say all that to say that my ideals of what can be done with your written work has changed throughout the years, and having an idea of the stories that I like and the stories that I read and consume, the stories that I consume just by nature of being home as a kid, being homesick, watching daytime soaps, being with older family members watching that stuff, watching primetime TV, watching even in my cartoons, my X-Men and Spider-Man and animated Batman and Gargoyles, etc., etc. There was this dramatic drama soapiness of these characters, and be it a gargoyle that turns to stone in the daytime with a Latina cop in New York, be it some genetically mutated superheroes who all live in a school. Like, no matter what it is, it was always something. And so that has informed my storytelling, and I think it has set me up, and many others, of course, not just me, but many others, set us up to instinctively go to some of these tropes without even really thinking about it. Because again, like I said earlier, I just wrote a story that I thought sounded good, that I liked. I crafted a story that had elements of things that I enjoyed. And so going back after the fact and searching for the tropes to see what fits, and finding that, to be quite honest, Enemies to Lovers fits this first sibling story arc so well. And it's like, not only is that part fun, but me discovering this and seeking this out in the midst of actually writing my book and not being done yet is helping to inform some of the decisions that I made, even against the outline, because my outline is all done, but it's a living, breathing document as far as I'm concerned. I have points that need to be met, that need to be hit in an ending that I want, but I'm not opposed to like altering things a bit, and I actually did by accident on another sibling storyline, but the accidental alteration only helped to enhance the thing that came after. I'll be so happy when this is done, over and done, and it's out there, so I can just speak freely, because I don't want to just be throwing spoilers out there. But like, this was, I don't know, this has been a time. And so Enemies to Lovers, I think that I can't even say if that's my go-to or not. I don't have an issue with it, and it's also not something that I think I run to with every story, because the other siblings don't have enemies to lovers. And then even stories that I've written in the past, because I'm thinking, I wrote a trilogy years ago, and there wasn't any, not off the top of my head, I can't remember any enemies to lovers there. It was all like hectic relationship issues where, with a stat cast of like 12 people constantly going through a bunch of drama. So that's my wheelhouse. Contemporary stories about black and brown folks going through heartbreak, emotional drama, and throwing a little found family in there too. So, but yeah, this is my I don't know, first in this little series. So yes, the work in progress Project Yi is still being worked on at the time of this recording. Sterling and her enemies to lovers arc is really doing it for me. And also, as a like quick little side note, so writers out there, or just anyone who creates, but specifically writers, this, having a character who was supposed to just be a one-off, or come in to serve a very specific purpose and then go off screen, and have them linger around and develop right before your eyes, is wild. I will say there's someone in the book who was supposed to serve the specific purpose of like, this is this person compared to this other person, and look at the similarities and look at the differences. My, that's funny how life works. But this fool has stuck around, and so I had to make him leave. And so I truly had to make him leave. I had to find a way to get him out of the door, and even that, I don't know. So yeah, I'll just leave it there. So that is, used to be frustrating to me, because I was one who, when I first started like outlining seriously, I was like, oh, I want this to happen like this. Man, now I'm like, shoot, I don't care. If you come in and make a big enough splash, I'll give you a novella. I'll give you a spin-off. Because I am the supreme ruler of this universe. So there's that. So let me know, what are your thoughts on enemies to lovers tropes? What are your thoughts on them in books? Like, what are some of your favorite books? Comic book, prose book, novella book, any fantasy, whatever. Like, what are some of your um enemies to lovers recommendations, because I would like to maybe look at a little bit more, or at the very least do a little bit more digging. But if you all have any specific books or any specific, even TV and movies, like if there's a show where you like this particular arc or this particular couple, yeah, this is it. So let me know. Alrighty. So this has been Reading, Writing, Rain. Thank you guys for spending this time with me. I hope you are reading well and writing well for all you writers out there. Reading, I'm not. I have a couple audiobooks that I'm reading right now, but that's not. I'm not devoting the time to it that I feel like I should, because I am trying to finish this book. So I won't even mention those right now. If you want to reach out to me, if you need to have some discussion, TikTok, I'm on there quite frequently, Reading, Writing, Rain. Of course, here I've check out some of the community posts, some of the older episodes here on YouTube, and of course the podcast, because this is a podcast as well. So if you're listening on the iTunes and or Apple Podcasts, whatever they're calling it now, and Stitcher and Spotify and all that, say hey, leave me a review. Let's see what's up. And yeah, man, just enjoy yourselves, and please leave those recommendations for enemies to lovers. And until next time, y'all, man, go out and read something, write something, and then come back and tell me, Rhayne. All right, y'all.